because Kendall basically said, like, she's sticking around. Like, she didn't come down there, and if Joe said no, she was going to go home. Like, she was going to stick around, and she told him that. So I think more than anything, and I don't know what the conversation, I mean, none of us know the conversations that have happened kind of behind closed doors, but it sure seemed like she needed a little bit more closure.
There is so much to discuss in Bachelor Nation, and I have called in an expert on all things Paradise, maybe all things Paradise Backlash. I don't know. Blake, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Sarah?
I'm good. There's literally so much to talk about. I know you cover The Bachelor on your Instagram stories, on your podcast, but I have to pick your brain on everything.
Yeah, let's do it. It was a wild week.
I mean, this might have been the best 4 hours of television in a minute. I don't like the double episodes, but this was worth it.
I agree. I was on the edge of my seat most of the 4 hours. I'm not gonna lie. It was crazy.
Let's start with Joe and Kendall, because that's how this two episode week started. What were your thoughts on their conversation and kind of their different pages? It seemed to me that the audience was slightly confused on maybe what Kendall's, not intentions, but if she was there for Joe, if she, what they knew about what was going to happen if they were both there and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I completely understand why maybe the audience was a little confused, because even I was, and I know the both of them, and I think because Kendall basically said, like, she's sticking around. Like, she didn't come down there, and if Joe said no, she was going to go home. Like, she was going to stick around, and she told him that. So I think more than anything, and I don't know what the conversation, I mean, none of us know the conversations that have happened kind of behind closed doors, but it sure seemed like she needed a little bit more closure. Mm-hmm. But for Joe, it sure seemed like that was closed. Like, it sure seemed like he said over and over again, like, I'm not in love with Kendall anymore. So as hard as that is for Kendall, she's sticking around. So what I think now, moving forward, is since she decided to stick around, like, everything that happens now is, it's on her. Like, she could have left if she wanted, but if it continues to get harder for her to watch him fall in love on the beach, that's kind of on her, because she can leave at any point. So.
Yeah, that's true. It was tough to watch a little bit just because of the flashbacks and Kendall getting kind of emotional. And I think it was a real conversation. It just maybe felt like a conversation that they could have had not on the show, not shading them or anything, but it almost felt like too real. Like, this relationship was too real for this show.
Yeah. Well, and I will say about the conversation itself, like, it was a pretty mature conversation on both their parts. Like, there wasn't any pettiness. There wasn't any real, like, they weren't, like, throwing insults at each other. It was a pretty mature conversation. But yeah, I agree. It was a little strange to have on the beach, but clearly Kendall needed it. So I guess I can't blame her. She needed it. She went down there to have that closure. Yeah,
and it was sad because it was also very real. I mean, Joe's point that I wanted you to move to Chicago and I should have been more than just a guy, but Kendall's point that she didn't want to necessarily move for a man, both valid and just kind of sad and real. But clearly Joe is feeling it with Serena P, because he wanted to make sure that she felt okay and validated, and he was confused and scared, I think. But I feel like that said a lot about his connection with Serena.
I thought that conversation with Joe and Serena, too, when Joe went back to Serena after Kendall, was incredibly real and genuine, because he was literally like, listen, I understand if you don't want to talk to me anymore, this can get messy. Like, this might get messy, So I thought it was pretty real and, like, genuine. And the one thing about Joe is his conversations and his quote-unquote, like, speeches, they never feel scripted. Everything feels off the cuff and, like, genuine, and that's who he is. And so I think obviously, I mean, we're seeing it, like, a lot of people can really relate to that. And I think a lot of people, like, I mean, Joe's gained the most followers, I think, out of anybody other than maybe Natasha. Like, I think people can really relate to his awkwardness and his, like, I don't know, he's very, his demeanor, if you will. So, I mean, yeah, I think he did a great job. And yeah, I agree, he's very into Serena, which I think he's even surprised about a little bit. Like, I think he's, like, shocked by how much their relationship is clicking and working.
Yeah, and I think they're cute, but I mean, I always go back to 23 years old. I don't know if she's moving to Chicago either, but, that's for them to figure. Yeah,
you thought LA was bad. She's in a different country,
Yeah, I don't know if it's forever, but they seem cute on the beach.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see moving forward. And it's always like, you never know until they get off the cameras, and then that's when it gets hard. That's when the real relationship starts.
Yeah, I also feel like we're missing something, because by the second episode, they were all sitting at the same picnic table hanging out. And I feel like and then in the promos, it looks like maybe it's going to come back up again, but I feel like they're airing things in very weird order or something, because Kendall and Joe were sitting next to each other a lot in the second episode.
I completely agree. I can't figure out the editing at all this season, because we've literally only had 2 rose ceremonies. That's wild. In 7 episodes, we've had 2 rose ceremonies, and I'm like, the whole thing, the Piper, Brendan, and then the Chris and like it's all very weird. Like the way they're editing this season, and I can't figure it out. I can't put my finger on it. Hopefully, we'll get when people start being able to do podcasts and stuff, we'll get a better idea of the way they edited things. But yeah, I'm very confused with the timeline as well.
Is there a generic, like, I don't know if it's different every season or whatever, but how many days that go by before there's supposed to be another rose ceremony?
Usually the average is 3, but they do stretch it. For example, that party that they threw last night, the like tight ass party or whatever it was, they do stretch it for that kind of stuff because my season was Chris and Crystal's wedding,
right.
And that was like a 5-day week with the rose ceremony being the 5th day. So they do switch, but usually average is 3 days.
Okay, quick touch on Noah and Abigail. I mean, again, cute. I don't know if they just have some communication errors. I feel like they solved after their kind of meltdown in the first episode on Monday, their problems seemed kind of solved by Tuesday, and it was confusing. But I feel like it was confusing for them too.
Yeah, I think they're genuinely into each other, but I agree their communication is a little off, and I think we missed a lot of conversations and a lot of time they spent together, and then they're showing a lot of the drama, which I get. It's been pretty crazy and good TV, but I think we're losing, unfortunately, a lot of the like relationship, like the deeper connections of these relationships right now, and I actually thought their conversation was pretty good. Like Noah and Abigail were both like, listen, what happened yesterday was very strange. That isn't the way I wanted that conversation to go. It kind of spiraled out of control. And they basically were kind of like, I'm not ready to give up. Like, I feel like that was the end result of that conversation. It was like, okay, we're not ready to give up. We still want to see where this happens. And I think that's a good thing. I like them together. I like both of them as people, separately. So I'm rooting for them.
I think that a general thing, this is a generalization, but it's like on this show, you either have like a super dramatic relationship and there's like an outside factor or something happens where it blows up, or your other issue, because it's like a secluded thing, is just you get in your head and you don't know if like you're doing it right. Like you don't, like I feel like with Mari, it was kind of like, I think I heard her say on one of the Bachelor podcasts that she like went to Wells and was like, when do people couple up? And he was saying that everyone was doing it really early. So then she convinced herself that she was coupling up too early and closing herself off and got in her head about it. So is that, do you think, fair to say? It's like you're either in a shit show or you're like, not bored, but like confused why you're not a shit show, so you sabotage yourself.
Yeah, you in that environment, whether it be the Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise, you overthink everything,
right?
And it just takes one or two like little things, and all of a sudden you're spiraling out of control, and you're like, oh my god, he doesn't love me. We're not, he's not into me. He's just using me. Like, yeah, that environment is incredibly stressful and anxious, and you overthink everything.
Well, before we get into the big one with Brenda, Natasha, and Piper, I did want to talk a little about this Kenny, Mari, Tia, Demi situation. Because what's interesting about this show is sometimes when people go on a lot of dates, they handle it, I don't know if it's just better or if there's so many factors, but with Kenny, I kind of feel like he's doing a really good job balancing 3 people being pretty interested in him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of shocked. Like, there's always somebody who kind of surprises you and goes on so many dates, in Paradise, kind of like somebody who's a little bit more under the radar. And Kenny's that guy this year. And I like Kenny. I know Kenny pretty well. I think he personally is into Mari from the beginning, and he likes her. And then she went that whole, like, let's see other people thing, and he was like, oh, okay. And he was like, I'm going to see everybody on the beach,
Yeah.
I do also think, though, Demi is super into Kenny, and I haven't seen Demi like this in a long time. Like the cute little date she planned for him, and like all this, like, she seems super into him, but I think he's keeping up his walls with her, but still like giving her, enough. And then with Tia, I thought their date was great. But the one thing Kenny's doing differently than maybe some other people on the beach, he's being completely honest and upfront with everybody. And I think that's why he is handling it really well. He's not trying to like say the right things. He's just being upfront and honest with everybody. And I think the women can respect that and appreciate that.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Mari, it's interesting because she, right after he got back from the Tia date, I think she was already having some regret. And then when he went on another date, it was like, she was like, this is my moment. I got to strike now. Because It is interesting. If I knew that he like went to the boom boom room and all that stuff, even though it was kind of her fault, because not her fault, but like she opened up their relationship, it might be hard for me to immediately like want to go all in, which I guess means that she's willing to forget that, because she definitely knows that like things went down between him and Demi.
I think the boom room was a bad decision on Kenny's part. I think he's going to regret that. I mean, honestly, for me anyway, and I think most people in Paradise, if you go to the Boom Boom Room, like, you are in a relationship. Like, then it is from you two then on. So I'm a little shocked with, you're right, like how quickly Mari kind of forgave him. Even though it was her fault, like, he still went to the Boom Room like the couple hours later with him. So, like, she's forgiven him pretty quick. And I also kind of see why Demi's been a bit of a mess this season. I like Demi. She's got a good heart. I think she's a good person, but she's been all over the place a little bit this season. But I understand her frustration here. Like, he slept with her, and then he's just going to, like, literally, I mean, in real time, 2 days later, basically be like, I'm out. I'm going to go back to Mari, you know? So I get her frustration and why she's upset, too.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough for real life and, like, again, almost too real. And she was, like, you know, had a little bit of aggression towards Mari in her confessional and stuff, but she has tweeted, Mari isn't bad. I was just emotional, bitter, and jealous.
Yeah.
So one thing about Demi that I think, whether you like her or not, she can usually own her shit. And I think that was great that she's already tweeting, like, clearly I was just upset about Kenny, and I took it out on Mari, because that's something girls do, but it's nice to kind of see her correct it.
Totally. I remember she said some pretty shitty things about me in Paradise 2 years ago, and she also publicly apologized for that too. So I agree. She can own her when she feels like she's messed up, said the wrong thing, she'll own it, which I respect.
I also think Kenny and Mari might have a real chance, because he did point out, like, you only want me when you have the rose, and, like, she was like, I'd leave with you right now, and, like, who knows if they meant it, but it felt I kind of was shipping them by the end of it.
No, me too. I'm excited to see where their relationship goes, because they both at the end of the day want each other, but they went about it in a terrible way.
Brendan, Natasha, Piper. Oh my God. First of all, real quick, what's in that weird green drink that everybody drinks?
So I don't know, because my season, the big, like, drink on the beach was Red Bull and white wine. That was like our drink. I know. It was actually pretty good though, because you're trying to stay awake and alert, but also get a little tipsy.
I like a Red Bull vodka, but white wine?
Yeah, Red Bull, white wine. I think it was Hannah G's drink, and we all just kind of started drinking that. So maybe that's like this season, like somebody created this green drink and everybody loves it now. So.
All right.
Maybe Wells is some kind of genius behind the bar. You know, I don't know.
We'll have to ask him one day. Yeah. Brendan and Piper, obviously, the weeks before she got there, they were talking about it. It was coming out. UsWeekly shout out from Piper. We did break the news of their relationship back in June, hearing that they weren't going on Paradise. Clearly, we were wrong about that part. And they had been seeing each other since around April. That's just what we heard. Who knows? Only they know. And who knows what's the truth, since they both told very different stories on the actual show. But she walks right in and doesn't even pretend. Do you think that they didn't have a plan, or she went rogue on the plan? What was the plan?
So, great question. I don't know what the plan is, and whatever plan they had planned didn't work. They muffed it. I think maybe they had a plan going in, but once you're in that environment, and she's been quarantining for a minute. I bet she was in quarantining for 4 or 5, maybe close to 7 or 8 days with COVID and everything, and then first few days on the beach. Those producers can get to you, man. Those producers can get to you, and I'm sure, I don't know what their plan was, but if the producer over 5 days somehow convinced her, don't waste your time with the other guys, just go for Brendan. Right. Don't waste your other time, and she was like, good idea. Yeah, by the 5th day, she's like, that was my idea. That's how good they are. And so I think Brendan looked surprised. Brendan was shocked. The look on his face was like, wait a minute, we're off script. But I don't know what they were thinking. The one thing the producers don't like is when you try and bamboozle them. Okay. And they will try and ruin you. They will try and ruin you if they feel like you have tried to one-up them or whatever, go over their head. And I think that's exactly what happened with Piper and Brendan.
And Brendan, throughout the episode, one thing, the follower conversation, which we'll get to, is one issue. But the stuff he was saying about Natasha and the calling it a coincidence that Piper got here, the saying she has selective hearing, that kind of stuff, let alone the stuff he said behind her back, is just lying to her face. And that is actually gaslighting, whatever, that big buzzword these days. But that trying to tell someone that they experienced, what we all watched happen, didn't happen, is just he couldn't have played it worse.
Yeah, 100%. So the way I look at this situation, Brendan's not the first person to have a quote-unquote relationship or girlfriend going on the show. You had Demi do it. You've had some other people in past seasons. The thing is, yes, that's frowned upon. It's kind of the unwritten rule. You shouldn't do that. But had he just owned it, and had he just, both of them just kind of been we f***ed up, you're right, we were super into each other, we should never have came down here, but we did, here we are. I think at the end of the day, they're still in a Bachelor Nation relationship. They are clearly into each other, they're cute together. I think they would have survived. But then it was Brendan kind of just digging his hole. And I was to the point where I was like, just curl up in the fetal position and just take it. Because the more, it's like quicksand. The more you struggle and you try to get out, the more you sink deeper and deeper. And he got tangled in a bunch of lies, it seemed like. And so I think, and then not only that, but then they're like, little conversation they had off camera or whatever, or that quote unquote off camera, but it was clearly on camera. They were mic'd up. It was just hard to watch, just being like, guys, you got to stop. You got to stop. You got to stop. It just got worse and worse for them.
Do you think when they were talking about followers and they were like kind of laughing at each other and he made that comment about Natasha having no prospects and it kind of seemed like he was talking to someone else. Mm-hmm. Do you think they either, because I feel like they had to know they were being filmed because like everything's filmed. So that would be kind of like giving them almost like too much of a pass. I feel like they thought that it wouldn't air because it's breaking the fourth wall too much. So they figured they could talk freely. Their ABC would never want to like blow up their own game with the follow, because you guys hinted that stuff, but this is the most I feel like the show has ever really broken the fourth wall, especially with the influencer stuff. I mean, you talk about like you're here for the wrong reasons, you talk about you want to be the Bachelor, but it's not always explicitly like I had 84K and now I have this. Like this was the most like influencer Bachelor BS I feel like I've seen on this show. So do you think they just thought it wouldn't air? Do you think they didn't think they were being filmed? Like what the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, good question. So I agree with you as far as this is I've never heard people actually, like this does happen though. Like there were people on my season who were talking about followers and podcasts and like things like that. It does happen. Your season
was podcasts. Everyone was talking about their podcast growth.
Yeah. So it does happen. These conversations happen, and they're not the first people to have a conversation on the beach about followers and who has the most followers, blah, 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 blah. But I don't know this is the first time they've aired anything like that, which is kind of shocking. That's why I think Brendan having a girlfriend back home would have been enough. Like, I think he would have been the quote-unquote villain. And that's why I think the producers were like, no. You tried to bamboozle us. We're going to destroy you. And they did. They showed everything possibly wrong that Brendan said. Like, and he said a lot of wrong things, but he's not the first person to do it. The producers were like, no, that's going on, that, we're showing that. And so there's the one thing I'll say about Paradise compared to like Bachelor and Bachelorette, there's so much going on. There are different storylines everywhere. So sometimes you're like, I'm not the main character. Like this, not only are they not filming me, but like they don't care about me. So there's times in that, because I remember when I was going through my drama, it was kind of like, obviously at the very beginning I knew, well, I'm the main character. I was like, I'm going to be all the episodes. But then later on, like I remember saying some things and I was like, I can't believe they aired that, because like I wasn't the main character. So there's just so much going on sometimes that you kind of forget that, they could use literally every single thing you say. And they do. They really, really do. So it's kind of crazy down there.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, to go back really quick, the conversation that the two of them had on their date was also confusing to me, because it seemed like he was trying to hint to her, that Brendan was trying to hint to her, like, I'm trying to make us look better, but you're not taking the bait. And then she almost got like upset really quickly when she realized that he was like dating someone else. I don't know if they just were again on such separate pages, but she had to know that he was like, had to be seeing someone to like play the game. And he did, only like kiss Natasha once from what we've seen. Who knows if that's even true, but like, I just wonder what was the disconnect there? Was he just trying to like give her hints that they like are doing, like, are going to look bad, and was she just not getting them? Cause then she was like, okay, you're my boyfriend. Like the whole thing was so weird.
So I think she was like, I don't know what she So the way it works, you're in the hotel quarantining. You don't know how long they've been on that beach. Like, she could have thought she was coming in the second day. You don't really know. So maybe she was shocked, like, wait a minute, you've been down here, 3-4 days. You've kind of built a relationship with Natasha to a degree. I think maybe it did hurt her. And she said something, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she said something like, you're downplaying. Yeah, she's like, you're downplaying our relationship. And he's like, I kind of had to. Like, he was like, I can't be like, hey, I'm just waiting for Piper over here. He's like, I wouldn't be here. Like, you'd come down and I wouldn't have been here. I would have been gone home. So, yeah, I mean, do I think he played Natasha? 100%. I think he played Natasha keeping that rose and staying down there. But at the same time, the producers would not have let him go home. Like, this was going to be the villain storyline of the season. So, I mean, I think now looking back, he knows that. I think he would have been like, oh, they're not going to never let me go home. I didn't have to play anybody, But at the end of the day, what he did was wrong. And what Piper did. Like, Piper's not innocent in this either. I think they both were in on it.
Yeah, and I think they picked the wrong person. I mean, anyone would be the wrong person to use, but I feel like Natasha's definitely got some Bachelor Nation connects. And I think this might have more long-term not damage, I guess, but effects than they might think. Because I mean, we're seeing I watched the follower count. I can't lie. It was wild in real time to watch it go down. He has surpassed Natasha officially in followers, which, you know, followers aren't the most important thing in the world, but it's clearly a symbol of how the world is feeling about the situation.
Yep.
I mean, it brings us to the Jessenia, Chris, Alana situation comparison. Chris and Jessenia were dating or had a connection, which, you know, she ditched Ivan for Chris, which some people were surprised by to begin with. And there's the San Diego trip. People are joking it's the new stagecoach. What happened in San Diego? Who knows? Yeah. But all these people met each other. Alana, Chris, and Jessenia were all there. And Alana showed up at this Titus party, and it took about 5 seconds, at least from what we saw, for the two of them to go off and start making out and Jessenia to walk in. Mm-hmm. Who knows what we missed, but it looked bad.
It did. And yeah, the San Diego trip was so funny because I was actually supposed to go. Thank God I didn't. I don't want to be involved in any more than so thank God I didn't. Because I was hanging out with a lot of them in Nashville one weekend, and they went to San Diego the next. I was like, I'm too old for this. I gotta go home and get rest. But yeah, it seems like they all knew each other, and I think that's the thing that is frustrating is they all knew each other. It wasn't like Chris knew Jessenia, you know, or Chris knew Elena, but nobody. Like they all knew each other. They've all hung out multiple times, so it wasn't like there was, in my opinion, there wasn't any kind of advantage for, you know, Elena or for Jessenia or for Chris. Like they all knew each other. It did look bad in that at the party, tight ass party, whatever it was. Now that part where Chris was making out with her and Jessenia walked in, that I don't blame Chris for, because he literally went to a different room. He was away. I'm sure the producers were like, "Hey, Jessenia, like Chris wants to talk to you. Go walk in there." And then boom, they're making out. But then he turned around and made out with her on the dance floor in front of him, which is messed up. It is, because Jessenia was right there. But at the same time, it's paradise. Like she's not. Tammy did it with Thomas and Aaron, and nobody freaked out on Tammy calling her scum and like all of this, you know. So it was frustrating to watch. I think it got blown way out of proportion, in my opinion.
You think so? Because I feel like the making out in front of each other, like, I know that it's like the name of the game, but it's even on The Bachelor and Bachelorette, like it's tough. And I know sometimes you can't help it, and maybe you're put in that position to see something, but like doing it on the dance floor in front of everyone, like that felt like very middle school. I mean, the whole party felt very high school and middle school to me with the spin the bottle and the decorations and the whatever. But like making out on the dance floor, like you're at like a high school dance, was like a little much for me at however old everybody is, like in front of Jessenia, causing her to leave. And then I can't lie, the next day, I totally bought Chris's tears for that hot second.
Well, so I genuinely think so. Listen, Chris messed up. Like, this is the thing. Like, he did commit a crime, if you will, quote unquote. But the punishment, I don't think fits the crime. You know, like he did mess up, but I just think it was so overblown. And I genuinely think he was remorseful. I think, first of all, I think he was kind of drunk. That's not an excuse, but he looked very drunk at the dance. He looked, the next morning, he looked like a mess. He was like disheveled, hungover, and he was just remorseful. Like, what did I do last night? What was I thinking? I messed up. That was, and I did buy it, and I think it was genuine and honest. And he tried to have the conversations. I think that was also my frustration. Like, he was trying to talk to Jessenia, and he was talking to Elena, but Jessenia was just like not having it. She was just like not having it, and then she sent like, you know, everybody out to gang up on him, and I thought that was just ridiculous. Like, so ridiculous.
I think the one thing maybe he did wrong, maybe it aired out of order or something, or the way when she walked in and she went on the date with him, and it seemed like he like announced it to the group, and everyone was kind of like mocking them, and then he went to go talk to Jessenia, and then she wasn't having it. So I don't know if it was because he didn't do it first. Like, it's so stupid that they're the rules of this freaking show, but I do think the common courtesy thing of talking to the people you're talking to before agreeing to go on the date, even though it's a formality, is a good look. Like, you can't go wrong with that versus like, she's here and we're going, and then everyone just making fun of them was tough, but like, that's why it happened maybe.
And honestly, you're 100% right as far as the editing. Like, my season, I pulled Hannah aside and told her about I was going on a date with Tayshia. That didn't even air it. You know, like, they pick and choose, you know, the narrative they want for these people. So, yeah, you're 100% right. It could have been edited completely different. There was a moment when I remember I took Tayshia aside after the date and was like, hey, listen, I had fun on the date, but it's not going to work out. They didn't air that. You know what I mean? They didn't air that. Yeah. So, they can pick and choose the way. That's why they can just completely create a narrative and an image for a person. And it's terrifying on that beach. We don't know. We'll find out. Like, we'll find out from Chris and from others. But the one thing I'll say too is Elena. Is that how you say her name? Is it Elena?
I think it's Alana. I don't know.
I didn't say it wrong. Sorry,
I don't know. Sorry, girl.
Alana, in my opinion, deserved zero hate. Like,
Okay.
I don't know why she was bullied. Like, they wouldn't even let her talk. Joe and Riley all of a sudden thought they were like, I don't know what that was.
Paradise Police.
And Joe's a pretty soft-spoken guy and, like, rarely gets involved in drama. And he was all of a sudden, like, he just wouldn't let Alana talk. He wouldn't let Chris talk. I was like, what is happening? But in my opinion, Alana did nothing wrong. She went down there. The man she liked was there. I mean, and then she went after him. Like, that's the name of the game down there. So there was just a lot of hate that I think didn't need to be thrown at Alana and, Chris for that matter.
All right, Blake. Well, thank you so much for your time. I mean, tell the Us Weekly listeners, I'm sure they already listen to your podcast and you're DJing all over the country. If there's anything you want to plug.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out my podcast, Behind the Rose Podcast. It's kind of a mix of reality television and music. So we have a lot of up and coming artists and stuff. It's a lot of fun. So tune into that. And then, follow me on Blac.h on Instagram. And I'll be probably in a city near you DJing. I'm out in Austin this weekend and Chicago next weekend. There's be a lot of Bachelor in Paradise people in Chicago in 2 weeks. So come on out to one of my shows if I'm in a city near you. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah.